I'd like to talk to you today about the power and symbolism behind the semicolon. The semicolon represents the author's decision to either end the sentence or continue the story. As authors of our own lives, the semicolon represents those challenging moments and the decisions we make in those moments that can set us on different paths. So let's break it down in terms of suicide prevention and how that story can go. First, there is the event. It might be a traumatic event that immediately changes our lives, or it might be a series of things that pile up. That leads to a feeling that's very painful and overwhelming, and what we do with those feelings in the next moments can have a great impact on us. For many, those feelings evolve into a thought that the pain needs to end. And then there is the moment when it becomes an intention to end the pain. The intention becomes a plan. The plan becomes an attempt. And tragically for some, that next moment is the end. So what can we do to change the course and continue the story? We can prepare ourselves and strengthen ourselves so that when we are faced with these moments, we are better able to continue on.
Hi, my name is Casey Lynch, and I'm a Sparta High School graduate of the class of 2014. 9 years ago this week, our community experienced a tragedy that changed the trajectory of countless lives, most of which have never been the same. 9 years ago this week, we lost Anthony Greenberg, a charismatic, kind, funny, and smart kid, to suicide. The effects of Anthony's suicide are far-reaching, devastating not only his entire family and friends, but an entire community. Anthony's death left us questioning what went wrong and blaming ourselves for not knowing just how much he was struggling. Little did most of us know, Anthony had been struggling with mental health issues like depression for years. But you never would have known it. To the outside world, Anthony was vibrant and always had a smile on his face. He would go out of his way to make you laugh or smile. Everyone liked Anthony Greenberg. Everyone. But this tragedy led to a downward spiral of my own struggles with anxiety and depression. I kept reliving the day over and over in my head. I thought about my last conversation with Anthony and if there was ever any indication that something was wrong. Thankfully, I found support at Sparta High School through my friends and classmates and also through Dr. Esposito and Miss Colt. I wouldn't be where I am today without their support. They helped me heal. And although these wounds will never fully go away, I now try to remember the best parts of Anthony and his impact on those around him. I think about Anthony every single day, and I probably will for the rest of my life. I think about the ones he left behind and his legacy. If I could go back and tell him one thing, I would tell him that it gets better. Life gets better. There is so much more than what you were feeling and experiencing at 15, 16, 17, and 18. Mental illness is a disease that can consume you. It can consume anyone. It doesn't matter how happy you appear, you can still be silently suffering, like Anthony was. You can have the best parents in the world, like Anthony did. And you can have amazing friends, but you can still not be okay. There are so many people that want to help those struggling, and so many people that want you here. So maybe if we start talking about mental illness, about suicide, we can start to reduce the stigma surrounding it. And maybe by working together, we can help avoid losing another loved one in the future. Let's encourage those around us to seek help when they need it and be a helper when they don't.
When we talk about suicide awareness, one of the things that we definitely want to focus on are, taking a look at our numbers, taking a look at statistics and seeing where we're at, seeing whether our interventions are working or where we need to put more resources, apply more resources. So in the United States as a whole, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death overall. But taking a look at our state of New Jersey, for youth, it is the second leading cause of death for the ages of 10 to 34. So let me repeat that. Second leading cause of death for our youth from the ages of 10 through 34. That is a significant number, and that's something that we definitely want to always keep a focus on, particularly for some other populations also that are being affected more drastically. Let's take a look at kids that have been bullied. They tend to commit suicide 2 times more likely than their peers. We have our LGBTQ plus population who seriously contemplate suicide 3 times more seriously than heterosexuals. Taking a look at a population like our Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth, it seems that from 1999 to 2017, our Black youth population, it was an increase in suicide with 73%. For our Asian youths, it became in 2017 the #1 leading cause of death. So we definitely want to make sure that we're letting those populations know that there are resources out there, and taking a look at our resources and making sure that that word gets out there so that we can get these numbers down, because suicide is a massive problem. It is a massive problem for our youth, and we just want to make sure that we appropriate the appropriate resources.
And I'm here to tell you why I chose to continue my story. I graduated in 2017 from Sparta High School, where Miss Johnson was my teacher and Dr. Lorenz was my counselor. I began feeling depressed when I was about 13, and that's when I started self-harming. My depression became so severe that I was admitted to psychiatric hospitals because I wanted to end my life. Some of the reasons I felt this way was because I was having problems with my family, and I felt like there was no escape. And I was having problems in school, and I felt like there was no escape. I realized I wanted all the situations that were causing me harm to end, and whenever I came close to ending my life, I was scared, and I realized I didn't want to disappear. But I realized that my pain was valid and my struggle was valid. I just needed a way to handle it in a productive way. So I realized that suicide was not an option. The people around me were really hurting. They didn't want to see me go, and they don't want to see you go either. I allowed Dr. Lorenz and Miss Johnson, therapists, medication, and my family help me the way I deserve to be helped, and I was able to get through it. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you it was pretty. I had a lot of traumatic experiences. It was hard work digging myself out of a hole of depression. But I believe that everyone can do it if you have the right circle around you, and you just happen to. I wish I would have smacked myself around and said, please listen to them, just a little earlier, so I could have utilized my time in high school just a little more. But I don't regret now, because I'm living in Florida. I'm in the Women's March Alliance of North Florida, where I'm able to advocate for women's rights and make changes in my area. I've used my struggles to turn myself into a better person and to learn things and move forward. And I believe that's something that everyone can do. I'm here for you, they're here for you. Utilize the help and stick around just a little while longer and see if you can turn your life into something that's worthwhile. I have 2 cats, and I'm going to college, and I really enjoy my time now. So I hope you can get past this and realize there's a lot more to look for.
My name is Tina Johnson, and I am a teacher at Sparta High School. This is my 8th year in the district and my 18th year teaching overall. And while 18 years seems like a lifetime, it has gone by in a flash. I've had the opportunity to work with hundreds of students, and every time they walk out that door for the last time after graduation, I just hope that they live a happy and healthy lifestyle where they are successful at doing something that they love to do. Unfortunately, this is not always the case with all of my students. I've lost students to accidents, to illnesses, and to suicide. But I can't always ask, what if? I have to turn around and now say, how can I help? Social emotional health is very important. Some students may show signs, a decline in grades. Maybe they're not hanging out with their friends so much. Maybe they're sad or they're angry when they come to school. My message to those kids who may be struggling, I am here for you. All of us are here for you. Never feel like you are a burden or you are weak. That is false. If you are struggling, let us know. Show some signs and we will find you help. And if you are a friend of someone struggling, speak up and ask us for help. We are here for you, not just as educators, but as family. Trust me, it gets better. Stay well.
So I wanted to talk about two specific populations of people who are at a higher risk for suicide. The first population of people that I wanted to talk about are people that misuse substances. So, people that are drinking or using drugs are at a higher risk for having suicidal thoughts and making suicidal attempts. And that is because, especially with high schoolers who are misusing substances, their inhibitions are lowered and they're more susceptible to being impulsive. And so if we have a student who is suffering from a mental illness or is suffering from prolonged period of stress and they turn to drugs and alcohol to cope with that, then they're at a very high risk of having suicidal thoughts or possibly making an attempt when they are under the influence of those drugs or alcohol. The other population of people that I wanted to discuss are the LGBT plus community. So we have students who might identify as being in a part of that population. And the reason why that population is at a higher risk is because they are more susceptible to bullying, to harassment, to family rejection, and even societal rejection, to violence, to substance use. There are just so many risk factors that can stack up that the chances of this population of people having suicidal thoughts or making suicidal attempts is so high. For example, if there's a student who is identifying as gay, they might get bullied for that in school, and that adds stress, which then maybe they turn to drugs and alcohol, and then the student is feeling alone and is using the drugs and alcohol, which lowers their inhibitions, as I talked about before. And right there we have 3 or 4 risk factors all stacked up for suicide. And it's just so important to know that these two populations of kids and of people, of adults, are at a higher risk, because if you know that your student is in one of these populations, or you might want to check in on them, and you might want to just know that it's possible that suicidal thoughts are in their head and that a suicide attempt is not out of the question. So it's so important that we raise awareness, and if you need help coming up with ways how to talk to your child, you can always reach out, email me or call, or any of us at the Align Wellness Center, and we'd be happy to provide you with more information.
Hi, I'm Frank Battaglia. Talk to you a little bit about Suicide Prevention Month, and also my experiences I have had with family members. I've had a friend whose father passed from suicide, and also I recently had an athlete that I had coached had recently taken his own life. It hurts, I don't know what to say sometimes, but what I do want is you to know that there is so much support out there, that if you're going through a very difficult time, to reach out to someone and to speak to someone, teacher, family member, a really, really close friend, somebody you can confide in, a doctor, somebody that you can talk to and they can listen. Because, sometimes you just need somebody to listen to you and not give solutions. Suicide is difficult to deal with when you're left here not knowing what had gone wrong. I get a little lost for words. I don't know what to say. I coach wrestling, so one thing I talk to my wrestlers about is, and just people in general, is we're not all dealt the same hand. Some of us might have broken families, some of us might have been born into a single mom or a single dad, or lost a loved one along the way, and their lives has just been shifted and altered like you can't believe. When it really comes down to it, we all want the same thing inside. We all need our love, our safety, our care for each other, and that's something I really preach to the wrestling team, because wrestlers come in all shapes and sizes, and life can be very difficult at times. But we just, gotta always keep digging down, finding that courage within to continue on, to make your life better, to make the lives of others better around you. And again, if you're having a struggle with that, reach out to someone, talk to someone about it. There's much support out there for you, and I just highly encourage you to utilize that, because the heartache that I see in the ones directly, the immediate family members to these suicide victims is heart-wrenching. It really is. They're left with such a void, and you matter so much. You do. You matter so much, and you might not know that. It might not feel like that, but my gosh, you matter a lot. So please, reach out, speak to someone. You matter. You do. We all matter. Everybody.
My son Jake, he would be 21 the end of next month, October 29th. It would have been his 21st birthday. His sister, in the beginning of February of this past year, he was having a hard time, and she was talking to him, and she begged him to please check into a rehab. I think her motivation for him to go to rehab was kind of different than his. As I found out kind of later on, he agreed to go right away, which I found wonderful and kind of odd, as he was always very adamantly against anything like that. Usually it was a beautiful, beautiful place. It was Recovery Centers of America. Every weekend I went to see him, just because I wanted him to know that, of course, we all thought it was a great thing, and he had our support. He came as soon as he got back. His plan was to move to Atlanta with his cousin, who is around his age. Well, this is all right when COVID happened. So the world is pretty much shut down. It's not like he went out and could meet people or go get a job right away, so everybody was pretty much, in the same position at that time, which I think definitely added to his depression. So June 5th, he called me. It was a Friday. So I got on the phone with him, and again, he was very upset. Said, "I'm lonely. I just want to talk to you," which, this is a very rare thing. He doesn't normally call me. I think he would call a friend or, somebody that. So we just continued to talk. And I said, "Jake, you can always call me. You can always talk to me. I understand. I know this is a big transition." And we just had a very long conversation. I said, "I really, really wish that you would call and make an appointment to talk to somebody, Jake." I said, "I know I've asked you this 100 times. He said, "Mom, I will. I promise. I'll make an appointment." So the next morning, I reached out again. I said, "Hello, Jake. Did you, are you okay? Did you make the appointment?" And he's like, "Geez, Mom, relax. I was on a Black Lives Matter walk with my cousin. So I didn't get home till late. But I actually did make an appointment for Thursday. This is Saturday." So we kind of went back and forth, and we were talking about some political things, about some things that are going on in the world today. And he got very angry, called me, said some not nice things on text, on the phone. And I pretty much just stayed very calm and didn't say much of anything, because I know my son, and I know the more you say, the more he reacts. Last thing that I texted him was, "My intention is not to fight with you. I love you very much." So I didn't hear a word back. Then Sunday afternoon, about 2:30, my ex-husband called me, and I picked up the phone, and he was crying. And he just said that he's gone. That was how I found out. I did try a lot, and I still wonder if that Friday I should have gotten in the car and driven to Atlanta. I will wonder a lot of things.
Right.
Always.
Right.
Ultimately and logically, I know that it was up to him. It's up to the person to get help, not something that you can force. But emotionally, as his mom, you just want to save them. And you can't. But when we had his celebration of life, had his principal and teachers come, parents of his friends, I got a card from a teacher that couldn't make it and wrote me a whole letter about how funny Jake was. The principal told me how he would try to help his peers, even though he was so down himself. He saved his best friend's life twice in one night from an overdose. His mother came up to me and hugging me and saying he saved my kid's life. So you hear all these amazing things he did. And I never knew that side of him and how he impacted so many people.
I'm Maureen Brogan. I'm the statewide Traumatic Loss Coalition Coordinator. For those of you who don't know what the TLC does, we are in all 21 counties and we do some suicide prevention work. And we also respond when there's been either a traumatic loss, and sometimes those losses are deaths by suicide. But thank you for inviting us to have the beginning of this important conversation. So Keisha?
So hello, I'm Keisha Harrison. I'm a resource coordinator with the TLC, and I'm glad to be a part of this conversation with both Wendy and with Maureen. So thank you for having me.
And I'm Wendy Sefcik. I'm the New Jersey Chapter Board member with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I also serve as chair for the New Jersey Youth Suicide Prevention Advisory Council. And I'm really excited to be here today to get this conversation going. It's really important.
You heard us say the word conversation several times, and sometimes when we're talking about suicide prevention, you hear a lot of quiet, a lot of silence. And again, I can't stress enough, because I was told that there's several young people from Sparta High School that were taking on this initiative, saying we need to have this conversation. So I'm going to just ask Keisha and Wendy also to chime in about hearing about this, have the conversation. What do you think maybe we could do better or do differently if we're trying to especially encourage young people to have this conversation?
I think one of the first things I'd like to talk about is the topic of suicide. It can be uncomfortable. It can feel scary. When you say the word, it can bring up a lot of emotion. So the first step is to find a way to be comfortable in having a conversation about suicide. It exists. It's a global issue. It happens in communities all over the state, all over the world. So youth, one of the most important things is to try to find a way to have these conversations with the trusted adults in your life. Can be uncomfortable, but these are conversations that we want you to be having. We all need to be able to be comfortable with feeling what we feel and expressing that and not putting on that mask of a great big smile all the time.
But it's also being open to saying, I don't feel great. I'm really sad today. And guess what? It's okay to be sad. So let's lean on each other. Let's talk about what you're feeling. Let's figure out what we can do to make things a little bit better. But let's just figure out how we just take things one day at a time, because really that's all we can do to really try to get through what we're going through right now.
They're definitely not easy times. What we had seen in the field too is that in January and February of 2020 was not a good start of the year for young people in the state of New Jersey. We had seen 14 deaths by suicide under the age of 22 in the first 2 months of the year. Then the pandemic hit and we kind of saw a pause, and I'm sad to report that we're starting to see an uptick again in some deaths by suicide in the last 2 months since we've started to transition and return things to normal. Let's look out for each other a little bit more when there's some type of transition, which could be a transition in school or grades or workplaces. Any kind of change usually is something that can elevate our either feelings of distraught or feeling if we are depressed, raise our depression a little bit. People say, what are the warning signs? And I don't ever want to minimize warning signs. But Wendy, what as a parent too, would you say, hey, this is what we should look out for, even a parent, friend, or colleague even?
One, trust your gut. Kids, no one knows your friends like you do. So look for changes in behavior. I started off by saying was that trust your gut. You know when you have a feeling that maybe something's going on, and it's really just an opportunity to open in the door and say, hey, I've noticed you don't seem like yourself. Is something going on? I'm here to listen. That doesn't mean you have to have an answer. It doesn't mean you have to have advice. It means you are somebody that will listen and validate what the person's feeling. We want to open conversation and really listen. There's that wonderful saying, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So we want to be listening at least twice as much as we are talking.
Let me give the plug, both for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention and the Traumatic Loss Coalition. Both parties do trainings. We want to keep that conversation going and are making some important movements here in New Jersey. And the young people that are listening to this, you're a big part of that. And we appreciate your efforts. And I think we're getting a little bit better at listening to your voice too. Stay well. Wendy, Keisha, thank you so much for your time. And let's ride out this pandemic together. So thank you.
My husband and my entire family is deeply humbled by the opportunity to be given a platform that educates parents, enriches schools, empowers children, and of course enhances our community. And the reason why we say that is a chair has 4 legs. If one of those legs is wobbly, you can feel it. So all 4 legs of our mission statement need to be solid on the ground. And that means it takes everybody. It takes the schools, it takes the students, it takes the parents, and it takes the community. So I tell everyone that Mallory's first attempt at suicide was her only attempt. Not every child that attempts suicide is a child that dies from suicide. Mallory was 12 years old when she hurt herself. And I don't talk about what she did to students because, again, I don't think that's important. We're here to talk about the why, not the what. If I had one set of advice for parents, ask, have you ever thought of hurting yourself? We are so afraid to ask those hard questions because we don't want to know the answer, right? As a mother of a child, if I'd ever asked Mallory, have you thought of hurting yourself? I would be afraid of that answer. But to every parent, I say, ask them. You are not going to encourage them. You're not planting ideas because trust me, suicide is a normal part of everybody's vocabulary now. Kids are talking about it. Suicide is the leading cause of death for our children. And if I had a message for children, give me one more day. Give us one more day. If you were at the end of your rope and you've had enough and you just can't take it anymore, and if you think that this world would be better off without you, I am saying to you, no, we love you, we adore you, and we will get you the help. And all I ask is for one more day.
I wanted to take some time to talk a little bit about the warning signs. We heard from some former students and they emphasize how important it is to look for those warning signs. It's important to know that 5 out of 6 attempts are really preceded by some of these warning signs. Some warning signs that we'd want to look out for, the number one is always previous suicide attempts. If a student or just a person in general had a previous attempt, that is the number one sign that another attempt may come. Other warning signs are changes in behavior, changes in mood swings, extra irritability, which could also be a result from not sleeping, not eating, or too much sleep. Another important one is to know if they have access to weapons or anything lethal. If they write a note or talk about suicide in a positive way, these are really important things to look for when it comes to warning signs.
My name is Liam Rowan. I'm a 2016 Sparta High School graduate. I was a student of Mrs. Johnson's, and I'm a United States Marine. A little bit about myself. I've deployed 3 times around the world. I'm an 0311 infantry rifleman, and I'm here to talk to you guys about suicide awareness. I've lost multiple friends in my career as a Marine to suicide. I've had to help one of my friends render first aid while I waited for first responders because he attempted suicide. I lost my best friend to suicide last May. My best friend was also a Sparta High School alumni and soldier in the United States Army. His name was Blaze Rose. He was also a student of Mrs. Johnson's and very close to all of us. So what I want to say about that is, Blaze had demons that he was battling. And Blaze experienced things that I can't imagine, that I was never there with him for. Blaze was always a very happy, very kind, very giving person. I can't remember a moment that he didn't have a smile on his face. He was my best friend, and he always will be. I wear his name every day on this bracelet right here. Now each day, 22 veterans commit suicide. And that's a statistic that needs to be lowered. I actually recently spoke to Blaze's best friend in the Army, and his friend told me if I couldn't see the signs, nobody could. Because like I said, Blaze was always smiling. Now that being said, Blaze never opened up about emotion with anybody. He was a very closed off person because he wanted to be strong. I need to tell all of you that it is okay to get help. It is okay to ask for help. And it is okay to not be okay. Those of you who are okay, but you think somebody might not be, don't be afraid to ask them. Ask them, are you okay? If someone is acting different and depressed, ask them directly, do you want to kill yourself? And if they say yes, get them the help they need. They might not like it, they might refuse it, but they will thank you later on down the road. I've lost too many friends in my career, not only to suicide, but to training accidents, to cancer, to multiple different things. But the things that hit the hardest was when we lost our buddies to suicide. It's a very, very tough thing to deal with. And it's a very, very dark mindset that they might not see the light to get out of. There is help that they can get. And I want all of you as young students to realize that you can help them. Look for behavioral changes. If someone's starting to be a lot more forgetful when they're usually not, if someone's starting to be a lot more disorganized when they're usually not, if someone starts to be more closed off and doesn't want to go out and do certain things and be somewhere with their friends a lot more, if you realize someone might be dealing with something at home, whether it's family life, relationships, friendships, whatever it may be, ask them if they need help. There is no shame in getting it. We get briefs in classes all the time about suicide awareness, and a lot of the guys here ignore it. And I'll be honest, I did for a long time because I didn't care. Until I lost my best friend. And believe me, I would rather have him here and call him as much as I did than have a bracelet with his name on it. Please, all of you, take into consideration what I'm saying. Look for these behavioral changes in people. If you need help, look for it. There is no shame in doing so. Thank you.
We've talked about risk factors, those things that make us more vulnerable. Let's talk about protective factors, the things that make us stronger and more resilient. Protective factors include things like having people in your life that you trust and can count on, your support network. They include access to medical care and mental health services. Protective factors also very importantly include our self-care and mental health hygiene. The positive benefits of good sleeping, eating, and exercising habits on our mood and energy levels are well known. It's about being busy but balancing your schedule and your responsibilities. It's about managing your stress and developing coping skills so that we have a toolkit of how to manage stress and anxiety. Protective factors are the things we can do on the front end to help ourselves and help others as we all work together to reduce these statistics.
It has been such a humbling experience to hear everyone's stories. We're so grateful that we've had everyone, contribute. And through the Align Wellness Center, the message that we want to send is to end the stigma. Please, we have to end the stigma. And please, if anyone out there needs help or resources, you can always contact us, but there are resources available to utilize.
I think we've all been affected by suicide in some way. If you were to start a conversation about it with any group of people, so many of them would have their own stories to tell. All of the amazing people who shared their stories have a common message, and that is that suicide is not the answer. So educate yourselves. Look for those warning signs, whether they are large and in our faces or subtle and barely visible. Get help and give help. Take care of yourself and others, and fight for yourself to give yourself that chance to find the hope and strength to continue with your story. Thank you so much for watching.
We hope that throughout this vlog, you've learned even just one new thing about suicide awareness. And it's so important to note that suicide does not discriminate. It's a preventable form of death that can happen to anybody. And we just hope that through this vlog and through Align, we can continue to raise awareness. Thank you.
I wanted to take the time to thank you all for viewing our vlog and for your investment in this important topic. We want to give a special thanks to Paige Lucas, who put this video together. So thank you very much to her. Please feel free to reach out to any of our Align staff members with questions, comments, and for resources. We're here to help. You can also view our Align website for resources as well. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next month.